Hello, my name is Jill Inkrott-Smith, and today I will be presenting to the executive team of Dick's Sporting Goods, Inc. Dick's Sporting Goods is the leading sporting goods retailer in the United States, but it faces a key challenge. Today, I will talk about that key challenge and provide recommendations to the executive team about what Dick's can do to continue its success and maintain its leadership position. So what is the key challenge that you're facing today? It's not a unique challenge. It's common to many U.S. retailers, and it's an increasingly competitive market. As you well know, in the last decade, a number of new competitors have begun selling sporting goods and apparel and directly competing with you. Of course, you still have your traditional competitors too. So there are the similar big box stores like Hibbett Sports and Big Five Sporting Goods. You also have your mall-based stores like Foot Locker and the Finish Line, which, while they have a smaller selection of products, do compete particularly in the area of footwear. There's also the local specialty stores like the mom and pop running shops or the bike store, which offer more specialized products and services but compete nonetheless. Now we get to more of the new entrants. So on one hand, you have mass merchants like Walmart and Target, who are increasingly selling basic sports equipment and athletic apparel. Department stores have also jumped on the athleisure bandwagon. Athleisure, as you know, is the trend which became popular around 2010 of wearing activewear in everyday life. And it was a logical extension for department stores to begin offering athleisure apparel in addition to the rest of its clothing options. Then there are the more significant disruptors. So one is suppliers selling directly to consumers. So now through their websites, key Dick's suppliers like Nike and Under Armour can bypass Dick's completely and sell directly to consumers. And last but not least, there are the online retailers, and of course the behemoth Amazon, who is selling sporting goods and apparel often at lower prices. So not only do you have these traditional and new entrants all vying for the same customers, but again, they are exerting those downward pricing pressures, like the Amazon. So now consumers are expecting lower prices, and there's greater pressure on gross margins throughout the industry. As you know, many of your traditional competitors have not fared well in this evolving marketplace. In the last 2 years alone, there have been a number of bankruptcy filings and acquisitions that have changed the sporting goods landscape. For example, in March 2016, Sports Authority Holdings, which operated 450 Sports Authority stores, filed for bankruptcy. 1 month later, Vestas Retail Group followed suit and did the same. Vestas had operated Eastern Mountain Sports, the footwear chain Bob's Stores, and Sports Chalet, and all three of those brands are now gone from the marketplace. The outdoor enthusiast space has not been safe either. In March of 2017, Gander Mountain filed for bankruptcy, specifically citing an unsustainable brick-and-mortar footprint and the loss of customers to online retailers. It doesn't appear that this challenging marketplace will cease anytime soon, as shown by this Porter's Five Forces industry analysis. On one hand, you have very high power of suppliers. All of you and your competitors are highly dependent upon your suppliers like Nike to come up with innovative products that will attract consumers to stores and to websites. And for you in particular, there's some additional risk. 32% of your sales are of Nike and Under Armour products. So obviously there's a very high dependence upon those well-known brands. Buyers, in this case consumers, also have a lot of power. Sporting goods and athletic apparel are discretionary items. So if the economy is down, it is much less likely that consumers are going to buy treadmills or new tennis rackets or even athletic apparel. Plus, as we've mentioned with the Amazon phenomenon, consumers are increasingly demanding lower prices. We've already talked about the threat of new entrants. And again, it's not so much big box stores replicating what you offer today, but those different retailers either adding to their current suite of products or online competitors coming in because of the relatively low cost of entry. One bright spot is the threat of substitutes, which has more of a medium threat when you take it all together. On one hand, for something like athleisure apparel, there's a high number of substitutes. So you can wear jeans instead of yoga pants. On the flip side, however, when you look at sports equipment, there aren't good substitutes. So There's not a good substitute for a baseball mitt or for a tennis racket, particularly because, as you know, sports have rules and regulations about equipment. When you take all of this together, though, the intensity of rivalry is still quite high, which again, you're seeing in those pricing pressures and the need for more promotions. Despite this hyper-competitive market, as you know, you've been doing well and have grown considerably. Thinking back to 2002, you only operated about 134 stores and had just crossed the $1 billion mark in terms of revenue. Fast forward to today, and you operate 852 stores, and in 2016, you nearly reached the $8 billion revenue mark. Looking back at the last 5 full fiscal years, your net sales have grown at a rate of 8% per year, which is obviously quite healthy, particularly for an established industry like yours. However, there are some warning indicators, and one of those is net income. So whereas your net sales have grown at 8% per year, net income hasn't kept up, and has instead remained relatively steady, as you can see in the light green bars on the graph. Now, obviously, one reason for this is investment in the business. Dick's has been investing in its e-commerce platform or in its own private label brands to support future growth, and obviously that would depress net income. However, one of the other key reasons why net income hasn't grown are those pricing pressures and the need for promotions and price matching, which have reduced gross margins. As you know, fiscal year 2017 has also been challenging. When you announced that same-store sales were down 0.9% in the third quarter, your stock price took a tumble, and today it's roughly half of where it was at its peak in 2016. All of this taken together, though, I think you should still have a positive outlook with the growth that you've been able to do and the investment in the business. It's still a very healthy financial look, and you're well positioned for the future. Another reason why you're well positioned for the future is your strategic plan. What we'll do now is we'll talk through the key aspects of your strategic plan and whether or not I recommend that you continue to maintain those aspects. If something's a green check mark, it means that I think it's a good strategy and tactic and you should continue to do it. And as you can see, based on the number of green check marks, I think your strategic plan is in a healthy place and you should continue much of what you're doing today. A key place where I think you're definitely on the right track is your differentiation strategy, which is exhibited in multiple different ways. I won't speak to all of them, but some of the key areas that I think you definitely should continue are your supplier partnerships. I think you should continue to build exclusive relationships like what you have with Reebok to ensure that Reebok apparel is only sold in Dick's Sporting Goods. So again, you have unique offerings that aren't also offered on Amazon. I think your investment in private brands like Thalia and Walter Hagen on the golf side are also incredibly smart because again, it allows you to have unique offerings that aren't available elsewhere, as well as increasing your gross margins. Another area of differentiation that I agree is highly important is the offering of services. So the fact that you offer in-store tennis racket stringing or golf club regripping is a differentiator, obviously, versus online competitors and other mass merchants that sets you apart. So in total, I think this is the key aspect of the strategy that you need to continue to be successful, and it's that differentiation that will set you apart from the Amazons and the other mass merchants of the world. Two of the other areas that I think that you should continue are omni-channel development and also, in a way, capturing displaced market share. On the omni-channel development side, again, this is the focus both on brick and mortar stores and the online platform, so you're able to serve customers wherever they want to shop for sporting goods and apparel. You've done this primarily through developing your own proprietary e-commerce platform, so you have control and can also link better with your supply chain. I also highly recommend continuing efforts like the Dick's Team Sports HQ offering, which, as you know, is your offering to youth sports leagues to give them a variety of services such as communication apps for parents, scheduling apps, the option to design custom uniforms and purchase them, or to send out requests for donations or sponsorships. It's a unique offering, and more importantly, it gives you access to customer data. And that customer data is key. In particular, I think the partnership with Little League to make Team Sports HQ an official partner, it gives you access to the data for 2.4 million Little League participants. So now you know whose season is going to start and who needs new cleats, and you can tailor your promotions to them specifically. And that's invaluable and the definition of a competitive advantage because it's unique and not easily copied. One thing that I might change slightly is your methods for capturing displaced market share. As we talked about, there have been a number of bankruptcies and you have taken advantage of that. For example, you purchased Sports Authority stores that were in lucrative locations, and you also acquired the U.S. stores of Inkrott-Smith International Holdings when it went bankrupt as well. I think that was smart to do that opportunistic growth in order to capture the Sports Authority customers whose store closed and to put a Dick's in its place. However, given that your same store sales are down and decreasing, there is a potential risk that there is an oversaturation of brick and mortar stores. Therefore, while I don't suggest that you should stop opening new stores completely or to close stores, you may want to look at slowing that growth. So for example, in 2017, you opened 59 new Dick's Sporting Goods, Golf Galaxy, and Field & Stream stores. I would say it may be worthwhile slowing that down a little bit because of that same store risk and the trend that you're seeing. On the flip side, you can still look to capture market share with a focus on e-commerce and continuing to capture customers and sending them to your website. Again, I think your strategic plan is in great shape, but there are some potential additional considerations that you could take into account for how you might grow further. So we'll talk through 4 of those options. One is adding new sports-specific store concepts. The second is developing even closer partnerships with your select suppliers. The third is ongoing training investment in employees, and the fourth is expansion outside of the United States. We'll talk through each of these in turn. The first one is adding new sports-specific store concepts. So what does this mean? Obviously, you already have specialty stores like Golf Galaxy and Field & Stream. So the idea here is to expand that to other sports. A pro for this approach is that it's consistent with your focus on differentiation. Obviously, at your Golf Galaxy and Field & Stream stores, you're able to target your products and services even more specifically to the golfers or the outdoor enthusiasts. So that would be consistent. However, on the flip side, it's challenging to maintain that level of expertise across sports, and it can be a potential distraction. And I think it may actually be a distraction in this case as well. As you know, Golf Galaxy and Field & Stream have experienced some difficulties of late, whereas same-store sales have been down overall for you around that 1%, negative 1% range. It's been even more at Golf Galaxy, closer to 6% per year. Field & Stream has also struggled in the hunting business because the demand for hunting supplies have been down, which shows the risk of a more specialized approach because you're privy to the whims of the consumers. As you know, you did try this concept previously too with True Runner stores. So as you recall, you opened 3 True Runner stores in 2012, one in suburban Boston, one in Pittsburgh, and one in St. Louis. And essentially, these were these specialty local running stores that offered training groups and community events. But as you know, all 3 of these stores were closed in 2017. So given the potential for distraction, as well as the financial expense of expansion, I do not actually recommend pursuing new sport-specific store concepts at this time. It's also probably worth monitoring the ongoing success of Golf Galaxy and Field & Stream and seeing if that's an area where you want to invest or if it may be distracting somewhat from your more common Dick's Sporting Goods platform. The other thing I would mention about this briefly is related to your organizational structure. Had there been a recommendation to develop more specific store concepts, I probably would have recommended that you also move to a business unit structure versus the current functional organizational structure that you have today. However, given that we're not going in this direction, I think your current functional organizational structure makes a lot of sense. It is increasingly difficult with growth to maintain that functional structure, but because of the importance of ensuring that your customer data is tied in with your promotions and is tied in with your retail facades, I think it's best for you to maintain the structure that you have today. Another potential area for further growth is in developing even deeper relationships with your suppliers beyond what you have today. So obviously you already have exclusive relationships today, and you also work closely with Nike and Under Armour and others to develop products. The recommendation here is to take that even a step further and to utilize your strengths and your increasing data collection through things like Team Sports HQ and actually sharing the insights from that data with your suppliers and working more collaboratively with them to develop innovative products. I think that's really important for both you and your suppliers because you both need those innovative products to be successful and to drive consumer purchases. Also, it allows you to focus on your competencies more so on the data side, and suppliers can focus on their competencies in product development. And of course, this is a relatively inexpensive method to try to improve innovation. Of course, there are risks. So there's the risk that you could share this information with the suppliers and they use it to sell products that they sell directly to consumers through their websites or on Amazon. But you can counter that risk by having legal agreements in place so that doesn't happen. So all told, I think this is a relatively inexpensive addition to your existing strategy and partnership with your suppliers. And again, just taking it a step further to try to build that innovation that you need for long-term success. So I would recommend this data sharing piece. A third option is continued training and investment in employees. And we'll talk specifically about store employees first. As we mentioned, that service differentiation is key. And to maintain that service differentiation, you need to hire employees with the right skill set who know how to do bike tune-ups, for example, or train them to do that. With the increasing commoditization and the need for you to offer premium products and services, I think it will become increasingly important for you to continue that training and build that training of employees for those specific, highly regarded customer services. Again, it's consistent with your differentiation focus. You need it to maintain that differentiation, and also I think it's empowering to those employees to be able to offer those services. A key risk is the cost. As you know, with increasing minimum wage rates in many states and across the nation, it's getting more expensive to have labor, and then skilled labor commands higher pay rates. And that's not sustainable in all areas. So I would also recommend that you look to offset the increased cost of the skills and training and higher pay rates by looking to things like automation in non-critical labor areas that aren't as customer facing. So potentially in your distribution centers, adding more automation, or even in the checkout line where there's not as much differentiation in the customer service there. The other thing that I will mention in the employee space for your consideration is looking to more actively identify high potential employees and to promote from within the company. One thing that I've noticed is that many of your senior leaders have been hired from outside the company. Your now former chief marketing officer, now president, came from PepsiCo. Your chief technology officer came from the Home Depot. And while it's highly valuable to find these individuals with skills and to bring them in, it can also be demotivating to your current employees who do not see an opportunity for promotion and advancement. So I would recommend putting a program in place to identify those high potential employees and to give them stretch assignments that allow them to grow and become the leaders of the future. Again, it's not a all or nothing proposal, but I think having some more growth from within would be beneficial to your employee morale. So overall, I recommend both of these things, continuing the in-store training and looking for those high potential employees. Lastly, another common growth opportunity that is used by many companies is expansion OUS. So let's talk about whether or not it makes sense for you to expand your omni-channel presence outside of the US. At this time, I don't think it makes sense for you, and here's why. For one, I don't know that your economies of scale will actually translate to other countries. So let's think about Canada, which would be a logical place for expansion. In Canada, you will probably need to have a relatively in-depth offering of ice hockey equipment. Ice hockey is not one of your key areas today, so you would not be benefiting from economies of scale by offering ice hockey in Canada. Another potential way to expand OUS is to have an online-only option, which would be less expensive than also building brick-and-mortar stores. But again, there you would have minimal differentiation versus internet retailers, so there's not that differentiation there. And of course, there's a significant financial investment. So while there's a potential for a large opportunity here, I think your investments are better suited to where you put them currently, which is in the differentiation through your private label, through your omni-channel expansion, and so forth. So if we go back and look at everything in total from a strategic planning perspective, here is what I recommend for your ongoing strategic plan. Like I mentioned before, I don't recommend wholesale changes. I think it's just some nuances and some small complementary additions. So again, building upon those supplier partnerships and going further to do more data sharing to build innovative products. On the differentiated services front, adding to that by continuing targeted store employee training. And that also ties into your internal employee development. So not only should that in-store employee training help improve morale and motivation, I think similarly identifying high potential employees and looking to give them stretch assignments will also help with that internal people development. Overall, I think your strategic plan sets you up well for success. The focus on differentiation that you already have will be key to compete against the Amazons and the mass merchandisers of the world, and I think that's the appropriate strategy for your evolving industry. As mentioned, we can do some relatively minor additions to your current strategic plan to complement it and take it to another level. But what I will say is, given the ever-changing marketplace, you will need to continue to keep your eye on the market and be willing and able to adapt to the changing environment, which again, I think you're well suited to do. I appreciate your time today and the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you very much and have a great day.